My sister-in-law despised me. She was dating a dangerous man. She decided to take my daughter away from me, and I filmed it, but my husband. For the last 12 years, Michael and I have been married to one another. Together, we have a daughter who we have called Lily. She is presently 6 years old and is a very fun child who has an active imagination. Lily has always been close to me and is a bit of a mama-esque girl. This is something that I don't mind at all, since I am aware that as soon as she becomes a teenager, she will have her own interests and may not want to spend as much time with me anymore. Michael and I are wonderful partners, and throughout the years, we have refined our routine in taking care of the home, Lily, as well as pursuing our own jobs in a way that is satisfying to us. To tell you the truth, I believe that I had a spouse like Michael, who was extremely respectful and communicative, and that is the reason why we have been able to achieve this level of peace. On the other hand, you would probably think that I do not have much to complain about on Reddit, no? In any case, I am writing this piece on Sarah, who is the sister of my beloved spouse. Let's just say that Sarah is a very tough person to get along with. I don't want to begin by revealing that I have a preconceived notion about her, but let us just say that she is. This conduct has stayed the same, even though Michael and I have been married for a very long period. She has always been really chilly toward me, and this has been the case from the very beginning. In the beginning of our dating period, Michael informed me that his parents would easily approve of me, but that his sister Sarah would surely question me, since she has always been quite protective of him. I recall that Michael told me this. Actually, it seems that he was correct all along. On the very first evening that we got together with her, she bombarded me with inquiries about my family, my upbringing, and my brothers. Regardless of the responses I provided, she seemed disappointed and maintained a sneering expression throughout the whole conversation. In addition to this, she would bring up Michael's previous relationships at random in the midst of our chat and make comparisons between them and me, as if this were the most regular thing to do. While they were eating supper, she made an invitation to Michael to accompany her and her companions on a vacation for girls. She explained to him that he needed to get his thoughts organized before committing to a relationship with another person. It was Michael who realized that I was obviously upset, and he instructed his sister to back off as kindly as possible. This comment truly made me feel uncomfortable, and I became visibly annoyed. This is something that has sometimes irritated me about my hubby. Now, this specific issue, despite the fact that he does raise his voice when confronted by his sister, he is not very firm about his limits because of the love he has for her. Because she is the elder sister, and in her opinion, she is the only one who has the best interest of her brother in mind. I suppose this leads her to believe that she may continue to press the issue as long as she wants to. Since we had our first dinner date, I had been under the impression that Sarah and I did not have a good relationship. Although it did cause me some pain, I was not going to go to great lengths to persuade someone to love and accept me if they had already made up their mind before I ever met them. Despite the fact that this episode occurred, I always took sure to treat her with respect whenever we did meet again, but she never made things simple for me. One event in particular that instantly comes to memory is the anniversary celebration that Michael's grandparents hosted for each other. I was invited as Michael's +1 since we had been dating for 2 years at that point. They had invited the whole family, and their invitation included me. Throughout the course of the party, members of his family would approach me in an effort to start a discussion, and I must say that I really admired how laid back and sociable his family was. Sarah was the only individual who did not even bother to welcome me or even exchange a single word with me. I was aware of it, and I made it a point to stay out of her path whenever I could. There was a moment in time when his grandparents requested that everyone please come around so that we may all snap a photo together as a group. Sarah made a big point of pointing out my presence and requesting that I remove myself from the photo as we assembled. As Sarah continued to declare that she did not want one of her brother's bimbos to be a part of this photo, Michael glanced at her with his eyebrows lifted. He then went on to suggest that it was possible that he may end our relationship in the future. Embarrassment caused my cheeks to flush, and I saw that everyone else seemed to be uncomfortable as well. Michael made an attempt to disagree, but Sarah continued talking over him, telling him that I was just a random stranger and that I should not have even gone to this gathering in the first place. When I had finished listening, I felt completely and totally ashamed. Michael had been present at a number of my family gatherings, and not a single one in my circle of relatives had ever treated Michael in such a manner. I quickly excused myself and made my way back inside the home so that I could search for the keys to my vehicle. There was no way I was going to continue spending even a single second with that lady. Michael, along with his parents, raced up behind me and attempted to apologize for their behavior. His mother made an effort to persuade me to accompany them on their trip, but the opportunity had already been lost. The fact that I was able to hear Michael's grandparents reprimanding Sarah in a loud voice made me feel even more awful for spoiling the day for everyone else. I departed without delay, and later that same evening, I even considered ending my relationship with Michael, since I was aware that I would not be able to deal with someone like his sister. On the other hand, it turned out that Michael came to my house to apologize, bringing flowers and pastries with that. He informed me that everyone had criticized Sarah for being impolite to me, and that he had threatened to break off things with her as well, which had allegedly caused her to weep. He also told me that he had threatened to be unpleasant to me. His sister's antics were driving him crazy, and he informed me that he didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. He was becoming fed up with her. Although we did chat a lot, the fact that he advocated for me offered me a sense of comfort. Michael remained true to his pledge in the days that continued to pass. At the same time that we stopped meeting with Sarah totally, he also stopped picking up her phone calls, because she would sometimes show up at his home without prior notice. He decided to change all of his locks and urge his parents to have a conversation with her in order to ensure that she would respect his personal space. Considering that his parents were on board with his choice, Sarah had little option but to come to terms with the reality that her brother did not want to have any interaction with her. We were under the impression that this would cause her to reflect on the manner in which she had taken care of me, but as it turned out, it had the opposite effect. She began phoning me and messaging me, and she would constantly leave me threatening texts in which she blamed me for everything that was going on. The moment when she showed up at my place of employment one afternoon and demanded to speak with me was the turning point. I was pretty scared up, but fortunately my boss came to the rescue and booted her out of the building. I informed Michael that I had no choice but to end my relationship with him, get away from his insane sister, file a lawsuit against her, and take her to court for harassing me. I also told him that I had no other option whatsoever. As soon as Michael heard this, he began to weep and asked me to give him a chance so that he could handle the situation on his own. He pleaded with me that there was no possible reason to end our relationship. After that, he was successful in persuading his parents to arrange a meeting between him and Sarah at their residence, which eventually turned out to be the location of their last talk. Both of his parents were aware of what she was doing to me, and they made it quite plain to her that they did not want to have any more interaction with her under any circumstances. Sarah was cautioned by Michael and his parents that the manner in which she was acting was on the verge of being insane, and that if she continued to behave in this manner, they would all back my decision to take her to court. Finally, Sarah broke down and realized that she needed assistance. I have no idea how she managed to achieve that. During her conversation with them, she revealed that she was in a downward spiral and had no idea how to halt it. Additionally, she disclosed to everyone that she had been jobless for the last 7 months, which had contributed to her bad mental health. She had lost her job 7 months before to this revelation. It was fortunate for her that Michael's parents took action and soon put her to a mental institution, where she could be constantly supervised. Despite Michael's repeated requests, Sarah eventually came to terms with the fact that he did not want to maintain contact with her. She did send me a text message for an apology, which, in my view, seemed to be a little bit half-hearted still. I hoped that she would recover for the sake of her. When Michael and I ultimately got married, we made the decision not to invite Sarah, despite the fact that she had eventually been released from the military and seemed to be doing well in her life. I expressed my desire to have no interaction with her, and everyone complied with my request. In fact, she did send me flowers as a way of congratulating me on my joyful day, which I took great pleasure in receiving. In the immediate aftermath of our wedding and subsequent return from our honeymoon, Sarah made the announcement that she was going to be married. Everyone was taken aback since nobody even knew that she had been seeing anybody at this point in time. However, we were all happy for her at the same time, until we found out that she was dating a man who she had met when she was staying in the mental hospital. To provide you with a comprehensive understanding of the situation, this individual, Christopher, was diagnosed with schizophrenia, was an alcoholic, and had violent tendencies, as stated by his medical professionals. When Michael and Sarah's parents found out, it was obvious that they were a little concerned about the situation. Everybody was informed by Sarah that her wedding would take place the next month, and she expressed her desire for just Michael to be present at the ceremony rather than me. The fact that she did not invite me was a relief to me, since it spared me the trouble of having to come up with an explanation for why I would not be able to go. I had sort of anticipated it. My husband, on the other hand, did not show up to the wedding because he was irritated by the fact that his sister had only invited him and not me. After the fact, those individuals who did wind up attending their wedding shared with us how terrifying the ceremony was. It was discovered that Sarah and Christopher were very intoxicated during the ceremony, and they were unable to even correctly repeat the words once the priest had finished speaking. Christopher continued to drink throughout the reception, and he eventually became so inebriated that he began to tear down his shirt and trousers as everyone else simply gazed at him in terror. Christopher, who suffers from schizophrenia, did not like the gazing and so quickly assaulted a server who was present at the event. The server was only a spectator, and Christopher yelled at the server, claiming that the server was suspicious and was concealing something. Christopher's family ultimately managed to calm him down and pay him off in order to persuade the server not to seek any charges against Christopher. In spite of this, it is understandable that this event left everyone with a scar, and we all felt a great deal of concern over Sarah's safety. If Christopher was capable of attacking a complete stranger, then what was the assurance that he would not launch an assault on her? There were attempts made by Michael and his parents to encourage Sarah to have a private conversation with her about the peculiar conduct of her husband. Nevertheless, Sarah seemed to be convinced that she could alter him and make him understand. Despite the fact that her parents made several attempts to warn her about the warning signs, she seemed to be sure that Christopher would never make any attempt to hurt her in any manner. I really wish I could say that she was correct, but as you probably well know, Christopher handled her in the very same manner that everyone had warned her about the last time. Over the course of many years, Michael and his parents made several attempts to maintain communication with Sarah. However, Christopher would willingly cut off her contact with anybody and prohibit her from communicating with anyone. The fact that Sarah refused to take any assistance meant that we were unable to pursue a case against him. There were 3 instances in which we were informed that the police were called to their residence because the neighbors were able to hear them fighting with each other and engaging in physical violence with one another. Sarah remained unmoved even in the face of everything, and she seemed to be quite certain that he was the one for her. Lily was born to me 6 years ago when I became pregnant. Each and every person was ecstatic with glee. We decided to send Sarah an invitation to my baby shower because I wanted her to be a part of the excitement at my baby shower. Due to the fact that we never received a response from her, which filled us with concern, Michael made the decision to go to her location in order to check on her. It turned out that Christopher had entirely shut her off from any connection with us and had thrown away our invitation so that she would not even find out about it. A few hot words were exchanged between Michael and Christopher, but they did not end up going anywhere since Sarah did not believe that what her husband had been doing was in any way inappropriate. I do not know precisely what occurred, but Michael became understandably angry. Christopher and Michael then exchanged a few heated words. With a sense of exasperation, Michael departed, and it was the last time we acquired any information on her. In spite of the fact that Lily was born, we never again communicated with her. Additionally, her parents stopped going to extraordinary lengths in an effort to persuade her, and we all simply hoped that she would pull through. During the short years that have passed since Lily was born, there has been an abundance of love and complete tranquility. Throughout the course of our marriage, Michael and I have never had any significant problems to begin with, and we have now arrived to a lovely understanding and rhythm that we both enjoy. Because she is such an inquisitive child, Lily never fails to keep us occupied with her antics. During the time that Michael and I have our weekly date night, Michael's parents come to visit us every weekend so that they may watch our children for a few hours. At the same time as the grandparents are spending quality time with Lily, it provides us with some time off. Up to the time when Sarah arrived at our doorstep 5 months ago, she was dirty and untidy. Everything seemed to be going well up until that point. Her feet seemed to be unclean, and she was not wearing any shoes. We did not waste any time in allowing her to enter, and I hurriedly brought her a blanket, since she seemed to be cold. Due to the fact that we had not seen her in years, we were at a loss for words when we finally did see her. Michael continued to ask her if she was all right while caressing her hair again and again. At the same time as she seemed numb, Sarah glanced out into nothing in particular. At some point, she disclosed to us that she had just had a miscarriage. While she started to describe how she had been pregnant 2 months earlier, we sat in disbelief as she continued to tell us about how she believed Christopher would be thrilled for her. In the first he was, but as the weeks passed, he became more apprehensive that this baby was going to take her away from him, and that she would not love him as much as she had in the past. A lot of fights would break out between them, and he would threaten to put rat poison in her food in order to get her to give up the kid. Sarah shared with us that she had a sensation of unease when she woke up on that particular day, and when she went to the doctor, she discovered that she had just lost her kid. Despite the fact that she was feeling so numb and nauseous, she was unable to get into the vehicle and drive back to her house, so she made the decision to simply walk. I have no idea how she managed to find her way to our residence, but I can only assume that she must have walked barefoot for at least 30 blocks. She could not recall the reason why she was not wearing shoes. I instantly offered her a hug once I realized how sad I was for her situation. It took her a few moments to process the embrace, but once she did, she immediately gave me a hug in return. We stayed there for a full 10 minutes as Sarah softly sobbed into my arms with her eyes closed. It was immediately apparent to us that this was her method of requesting assistance at that very moment. Michael gave the impression that he was prepared to face Christopher directly. Nevertheless, I was able to convince him to alert the authorities and inform their parents, who would be more suited to deal with the matter. His mother and father expressed their profound appreciation for the return of their daughter and reassured her that they would always be there for her, no matter what. When the police officers took her statement, they were just as surprised as we were by the many abuses that Sarah had been subjected to in her marriage up to that point, and they chose to remain silent. In spite of Christopher's protestations and threats, he was picked up and taken into custody without delay. In spite of the fact that he continued to insist to the very end that he had nothing to do with her miscarriage, the toxicology report that Sarah received revealed that she had, in fact, been poisoned by him, which resulted in the death of her mother and her unborn child. To make a long story short, the court decided that Christopher should be sent to a psychiatric institute for treatment indefinitely because of his mental health concerns and his inability to stand trial. Despite the fact that this choice was plainly unpleasant, we were thankful that Sarah had returned to us in a healthy and safe state. At this point, I believe it is necessary to make it clear that all of the earlier sentiments of hostility that I had for her have vanished. I felt terrible for her because I am a woman, and I wanted nothing more than to forget about our history so that we could continue to go ahead. After going through all of this, my only hope was that Sarah would be able to recover. Not only did she seem calm with me, but she had also stopped being nasty. We introduced Lily to her when we believed that she was ready to do so, since we believed that it would assist her in recovering more quickly. In a short period of time, she became quite close to Lily, which was something that none of us really bothered about. I suppose that this ought to have been the first warning sign for me. Through the course of many weeks, she would discover methods to spend an increasing amount of time with my daughter by abruptly showing up at our residence without first making a phone call. It would not be difficult for her to just drive over since she was living with her and Michael's parents. She would insist on giving Lily showers or reading her bedtime tales, which at first seemed to be a thoughtful act on her part. On the other hand, her ever-increasing presence began to give off an odd vibration. It got to the point where Sarah would show up practically every day without prior notice, and would always find a cause to remain for a longer period of time than was really required. In an effort to be engaged in Lily's day-to-day activities, she would bring her toys and presents on a regular basis. She often made strange comments about her hairdo or her clothing, telling me that Lily would look better if she wore her hair or wore her clothes in a certain manner, which was something that disturbed me a little bit. Although I was grateful for her attempts to form a connection with Lily, I couldn't help but feel that she was gradually returning to the methods in which she had previously undermined me. My maternal instincts, on the other hand, kicked in when I realized that this time it was not about her brother, but rather about my daughter. I had a conversation with Michael, who reassured me that maybe I was just overthinking things and that his sister was only trying to deal with the grief that she was experiencing. When he brought up the fact that she had just lost her kid, it caused me to feel horrible, and as a result, I made the decision to simply leave her alone. Taking care of my kid may make her feel pleased for a short period of time, so what could possibly go wrong with this situation? As the days progressed, I made every effort to be agreeable to her presence in our home on a consistent basis. She began to take care of Lily on a daily basis while we were at work, and she would even take her to the park in the evening to participate in some playtime. Whenever I would return home, I would sometimes see that my daughter would not exhibit the same level of passion for me as she had in the past. She would gaze at me with an inquisitive expression on her face, but she no longer rushed up to welcome me. I would attempt to chat to Lily about the day and whether or not she had any problems with Sarah being there, but she would not engage very much in the discussion. Following Sarah's departure, I would continue to talk to her. My daughter, who was so happy whenever she was in my presence, seemed to be depressed and less enthusiastic. When I attempted to speak to my husband about the change in my daughter's conduct, he would gently tell me that I was simply worrying too much about unimportant things. As her mother, I felt a great deal of concern about the shift in my daughter's behavior. There were times when Michael would attempt to reassure me that everything was only in my imagination and that Lily was just maturing. However, the nagging sensation that I had inside my brain continued to annoy me, so I discussed it with one of my coworkers. He came up with the bright idea that I could get nanny cameras from Amazon and place them in both my daughter's room and our living room in order to keep a watch on Lily. I thought this was a brilliant idea, and I went out and purchased 2 cameras right away. I refrained from providing Michael with this information because I did not want him to disregard my emotions once again. I returned home 2 days earlier, and after Lily went to bed, I made the decision to check the nanny cameras that I had put up. Seeing that Michael was sitting in the living room watching television, I went to my study room to view the video, which also had audio. Sarah focused only on taking care of Lily and interacting with her in a playful manner in the beginning. It seems that she had a lot of experience working with youngsters. On the other hand, you can imagine how surprised I was when I saw Sarah pull a book out of her bag, which was something that I had not seen previously. In most cases, we try to read our daughter books that are suitable for her age in her room, but this particular book was not like any other. During the afternoon, before Lily was scheduled to take a nap, she read the book to her. As I listened to her tell the tale, I became aware that it was about adoption and how a woman may occasionally give up her kid to another mother so that the child might be cared for by the other mother. In the course of Sarah's continued retelling of the narrative to my daughter, she would sometimes add that this was the reason why she had placed Lily in my care all those years ago, since she was not prepared at the time. As she continued to assure my kid that she would always be her true mother and that no one could love her more than she could, my eyes widened in terror. She then went on to say that she would always be her mother, regardless of what happened. She gave her a kiss on the forehead before leaving her to go take a sleep. I suddenly realized the nonsense that she had been feeding my daughter for God knows how long, which had apparently caused my daughter to act in an odd manner around me. My palm trembled in rage as I finally comprehended what she had been doing. It is likely that this poor youngster is experiencing a great deal of confusion and just does not know what to think. I had every intention of storming downstairs and demanding that my husband never again let his sister to enter our home, but I was prevented from doing so by something entirely. As an alternative, I made the decision to take the day off so that I could spend some time alone with my daughter and figure out what precisely Sarah had been saying her in order to emotionally manipulate her. Yesterday, when I informed Sarah that she did not have to come over and babysit, she went into a panic. She said that she enjoys spending time with my daughter, but I told her to back off and that I wanted the day to be spent with my kid alone. Michael did inquire as to whether or not I was in good health, and I responded by assuring him that everything was okay, but that I just needed some time off. After that, I brought my daughter to the park that she enjoys the most, so that we could spend the whole day playing together. Before we brought up the topic of discussion, we had burgers and spent the whole day laughing and having a nice time. I want for my kid to have a sense of security while she was in my presence. When I finally started questioning her about the topic that she and her aunt had been discussing, She became a little bit more reserved. All I wanted Lily to know was that she could speak to me about anything, and I assured her that she was in no way in danger. I also assured her that I would not punish her in any way. And it was at this point that my daughter revealed the truth. She shared with me that Sarah had been attempting to persuade her for many weeks that she was her biological mother, despite the fact that she did not really think that Sarah was her mother. In addition to this, she would explain to her that I would ultimately abandon her due of the fact that only genuine moms love their children. She was afraid to ask me about it since she was so adamant about it, and she was afraid that I would really throw her out of the house. It was clear to me that she had feelings for me, and that she did not want to move in with Sarah. The moment I heard those words, my heart bled for her, and I glanced at her face, which was covered with eyelashes. In sharp contrast to the happy and cheerful kid I knew so well, she seemed to be so much smaller and more fragile than she really was. In order to reassure her that everything was going to be okay, I crouched down to her level, gently held her hands in mine, and continued to reassure her. Regardless of the circumstances, we would make it through this together. I gave her a bear embrace, and I could sense the dread and sorrow that she was experiencing. After failing to protect my kid from this psychopath, I felt like a failure. I felt like I had failed. In order to reassure her that she did not need to be concerned about anything, I promised her that Michael and I will handle this situation. On the other hand, my daughter later told me that Michael was already aware of all that was going on. When I asked her what she meant, she responded by saying, "I asked Daddy, and he knows about this, but he told me not to tell you anything." The realization that my husband had chosen to protect his sister rather than our daughter caused the blood to drain from my face. He had chosen to protect his sister despite the fact that he had found out what his sister was doing. Every single item was already familiar to him. No longer could I allow my kid to be in the company of these individuals. When it came to her own mother, I did not want my daughter to feel perplexed and afraid of her very own mother. Due to the fact that I was her mother, it was my responsibility to shield her from this. I hurriedly drove back to our house and loaded our baggage. I let my parents know that I would be visiting them at their home, and I also informed them that if Michael inquired about it, we would let him know that I was missing them and that I wanted to spend time with them. To my good fortune, my parents are quite encouraging, and as a result, they did not even hesitate to give their approval. During the time that I am writing this, I have already discussed everything with my parents, and they are just as astonished as I am over what Sarah has been telling my daughter. It is true that Michael called me when he must have arrived home to an empty house, but I made an effort to seem as normal as possible by informing him that I needed a break from both our place of residence and my job. However, I reassured him that I would only be staying with my parents for a few days, despite the fact that he did seem skeptical. For the most part, we don't get into fights, so I suppose he didn't give it much thought, despite the fact that my conduct must have appeared peculiar to him. Right now, I am experiencing a lot of internal struggle. I am completely at a loss for what to do. Which approach should I use to deal with this circumstance? Would it be a mistake for me to keep my kid and I at a distance from the wild sister of my husband? Update 1. Oh my goodness, when I got up, there were over 900 comments beneath my post. The fact that so many people even use Reddit and have found my article is something that I just cannot believe. I made sure to use fictitious names throughout my narrative, so I am hoping that none of Michael S. relatives would discover that it is inspired by him. I also want to address those individuals who are criticizing me in the comments section for not having discussed this matter with my husband first. I want to tell you that I would have absolutely discussed this matter with my husband if my daughter had not informed me that she had attempted to discuss this matter with Michael when he first discovered it. I suppose you could say that it is my mother's instinct, but the fact that my husband knew for weeks about how differently my daughter had been acting with me, yet he would continue to gaslight me, demonstrates that a confrontation with him would not have resulted in anything helpful. It was also important to me to remove my daughter from the predicament as soon as possible, and she is currently in a far more secure environment with my parents here. It is of the utmost importance that she refuses to be fed falsehoods by any psychopath. Sarah has made several attempts to get in contact with me, sending me a number of texts in which she insists that she must see my daughter and expresses how much she misses her. It is my intention to put an end to this matter once and for all at the approaching family gathering that will take place at the residence of Michael S. parents this coming weekend. Considering that Michael's grandparents are in town, I thought it would be a good idea to organize this get-together weeks in advance so that we could all have the opportunity to spend some quality time together. On the other hand, in light of recent happenings, I want to make use of this chance to speak my truth and to ensure that Sarah will never again come anywhere near my daughter. Update 2. My return brings with it an update. In accordance with the plan, I addressed Michael about the matter at the family gathering. Despite the fact that I was really anxious before attending, I made the decision to bring the tape from the nanny cam with me so that I would have credible evidence to present to everyone. I did in fact call Sarah out in front of everyone over lunch. I want to go into too much detail about it since I want to get right to the point. She seemed to be rattled up and made an effort to shrug it off as if it were not a significant event. Following that, I demonstrated the clip from the nanny cam and explained to her that I had captured what she had shared with my daughter. I then posted the video to the family group chat so that everyone could see what I was talking about, and I watched as the color left her face as I did so. Her mother and father were utterly shocked as they witnessed her attempt to persuade my daughter that she was, in fact, her biological mother. Following this, I approached Michael and disclosed to him the manner in which he had failed to safeguard our daughter. Although he seemed to be very remorseful, my husband attempted to defend his actions by claiming that he didn't give it much consideration and that he believed that this would assist his sister in overcoming her loss. In the end, he made the decision to continue his silence, despite the fact that he was divided between helping his sister's recovery and informing me about it. It was my responsibility to let him know that I could no longer trust him as a result of his behavior, and that I would never again allow my daughter to be in his presence or with his family. Despite the fact that I saw my spouse shed tears for the first time in a very long time, I did not change my mind about the choice that I had made. During our conversation, I let him know that I could not allow my daughter to grow up in a household where her father would not advocate for her in order to safeguard his sister, who suffers from mental illness. The parents and grandparents of Michael and Sarah expressed their regret to me and gave me their word that they would go to great lengths to ensure that Sarah would never again come into contact with our daughter. Sarah seemed to be in a state of complete humiliation, yet she did not even have the honor to apologize once. Although Michael continued to defend his behavior, I paid no attention to him. I departed not long after this altercation since I had completed my duties at this location, and I had no desire to continue having any interaction with any of them. Update 3. Seeing as how some of you are perplexed by my choice, I felt it necessary to provide some clarification. Yes, I intend to file for divorce from my spouse, as I am aware that many of you wanted me to give my husband a second opportunity because this wasn't totally his fault, and I do agree that Michael is a fine guy. I will give him a second chance. Nevertheless, just because a guy is a nice man does not always mean that he is a good parent. There is no guarantee that he was a good parent to Lily just because we never had any disagreements with one another. Instead of spending weeks attempting to cover it up and gaslight me, he should have nipped this from the beginning when our daughter came to him with misgivings. He should have done this. It is no longer possible for my daughter and I to have faith in him. After all that Sarah had to go through, I warmly welcomed her back into my life because, as a woman, I felt sorry for her. However, in the end, she demonstrated precisely why I had never liked her in the first place. Although I am aware that Sarah's experience of abuse was incredibly distressing for her, this does not imply that our daughter should be forced to bear the consequences of the abuse she endured. Although it was obvious that she had mental health problems to begin with, we believed that she had improved by the time we met her. She was an adult. The attitude of my husband, on the other hand, was the thing that took me by surprise the most. The fact that he would choose her mental health above that of our daughter is evidence that he should never be in Lily's presence. After what occurred with Sarah, it became very evident that he wanted to protect her more than he wanted to protect us. He had always been such a loving spouse, and I believed that I could trust him. From point on, I solemnly swear that I will safeguard my daughter in whatever circumstance that may arise. In the event that I reveal his family background during the custody fight, I am certain that I will be able to get full custody of my daughter.